All right, so talking about the thrift savings plan and the basics about it with Military Money Basics. So, as a disclaimer, I am not a financial planner. I'm just an active duty military member that's trying to share some of this information. You should not consider this financial advice. So, to start off, what is the TSP? So, the TSP is basically a way to save for retirement for people in the federal government. So it's the retirement plan for federal government employees and uniformed service members, such as those in the military. You can think of it as pretty similar to a 401k, like you might see in the civilian sector. Like a 401k, there are tax benefits associated with it. You have the employee contributions, and if you are under the blended retirement system, you can also have match contributions, which are contributions made by your employer. So the tax benefits of the TSP, there are two types of contributions, or two places that your money can go. So the first is your traditional contributions, which are pre-tax dollars, and the second is Roth contributions, which are post-tax dollars. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute, but contributions to the TSP that you make as a service member, you can choose if you want them to be pre-tax or post-tax. So if they're going to the traditional bucket or the Roth bucket. Any contributions made by the military on your behalf, so the matching contributions, at this time in 2025, can only go to the traditional TSP. You can have both a traditional and a Roth TSP. So you can put your money into a Roth TSP, and the matching money from the military will go into a traditional TSP. You can choose to put your money in a mixture of traditional and Roth, but your matching contributions from the military will only go to the traditional. So talking about pre and post-tax, what does that mean? So pre-tax contributions are contributions that are taken from your basic pay prior to it being taxed with federal tax. Roth contributions are contributions that you pay after your base pay is taxed by the federal government. Then you make your contributions. Now there's a lot on this, but if you look here at the left, we're looking at the pre-tax or traditional contributions. So these would be contributions made by the service member that are coming in before your federal tax is kicked in. So these contributions are not taxed going in. They are taxed at the time you withdraw them, and both your contributions and your gains are taxed when you're withdrawn. The pro to this is that it decreases your taxable income, so you don't pay as much federal tax on the front end. The con to this is that then you have to pay taxes on your contributions and all of the gains at the time of retirement. Roth contributions, or post-tax contributions, are taxed when the money goes in. So you get your paycheck, it gets taxed, then you put money into the TSP. The pros to this is that money is not taxed again. So it's taxed going into the TSP and is not taxed when it comes out, so it's able to grow tax-free, and distributions do not have taxes paid on them. For simplicity's sake, I put someone with $100,000 of taxable income, realizing this is fairly unlikely for most people in the military, as our taxable income is, for the most part, just our base pay. Any bonuses also fall into that taxable income, but BAH and BAS are not taxable. But numbers are easier for me when they're in simple amounts, like 100,000. So there's a difference between the two of $2,200. You take home less with the Roth contributions. So investment options in the TSP. There are individual and lifestyle funds. This is what you choose to invest your money into. When you initially start investing, your money goes into the G fund. The G fund doesn't really make a lot of money. It's intended to have a very small amount of growth, but have very, very low risk, because the stock market is a risk, and the other funds have higher risk, but also have potentially higher returns. So the individual funds that are options are the G fund, which is essentially U.S. Treasury securities. The F fund is bonds, invested in bonds. C fund, which is similar to the S&P 500 or just common stock market index funds. The S fund, which is small cap stock index investment fund. And then the I fund is your international stock index, but it does exclude USA stocks China and Hong Kong stocks. Now, excluding the USA, it's so that it's international because your S&P 500 already covers the American stocks. So that way you're not double dipping. These all have very low costs. So you're looking at 0.04% on average for these funds, for the management funds, very low in the TSP. In addition to the individual funds, you have lifestyle funds. These are the 11 different L funds, and they are based on a target retirement date. These lifestyle funds are made up of a mix of the 5 individual funds. Further you are out from retirement, the more aggressive the fund will be, meaning that it has a higher percentage of stocks and a lower percentage of securities and bonds. Now, if you're looking for an easy way to say, hey, I want pretty decent return, I don't really want to worry about picking which funds I want my money into, you say, today is 2025. I just joined the military. I am 20 years old and I plan to retire when I'm 60. So you have 40 years until you're looking at retirement. That means you want to pick the target lifestyle fund with a date 40 years from now. So you'd want to do the L fund that would be like L 2065, 40 years from now. It's pretty easy to just pick the number for the year you want to retire and forget about it. Now, as you get closer to retirement, they will reallocate your funds, moving it so you have a higher percentage of bonds, making it less risky if the stock market has a bad couple of years, that you'll still have money. So your investment options are, you can choose the individual funds, or you can put it in a lifestyle fund where it's a mix of the individual funds. Then the question is, how much should you contribute to the TSP? And the answer is, it depends. As a general rule, if you're under the blended retirement system, you should put in a bare minimum of 5%. That's so you can get the full amount of matching money. If you are under the high 3, you don't get any matching money, but everyone should be putting in 5 to 10% at a minimum. So if you begin your service after January 1st, 2018, you're in the blended retirement system. You are automatically enrolled into 3% basic pay deductions. If you began service prior to January 1st, 2018, then you are not in the blended retirement system. You're likely in high 3, and you have had no auto enrollment made. You do not get any matching. The TSP is still a great option though, because just like a 401k and a civilian job, you can have the tax savings of saving for retirement with tax benefits. So if you're under the blended retirement system, if you started after January 1st, 2018, you automatically are putting in 3% unless you've gone in and changed it. So you can see here that if you're putting in 3%, automatically they're going to put in 1%, and then they're going to match 3%. So you'd be getting a total of 7% in. Now, you get the 1% regardless. Even if you're not putting anything in, they will put 1% of your base pay into your TSP. So your TSP has money in it if you're in the blended retirement system. The reason I say you should put in a minimum of 5% is that's where you max out the matching. At 5%, you're still getting that 1% they're putting in regardless, and then they're going to give you 4% to match the 5% you're putting in for a total of 10%. So how it works is you get 1% for every percent you put in up until 3, and then you get a 0.5% at 4, and an additional 0.5% at 5. So the most that the military is going to put in is 5%. You can put in more, and it doesn't change the value that they're going to put in. It doesn't make it less valuable. It just means you're saving more, which is awesome, and I think you should do more than 5%. But if you're not putting in 5%, you are losing free money. This is money that is part of your compensation that you are losing out on if you're not putting in the 5%. If you get nothing else from this, put in the 5%. That is a 100% return. You put in 5%, you get 5%. You're getting 100% return on your money. Now, there is vesting to be considered. Any money that you put in, you are vested. So your contribution is vested as soon as it's made, meaning that if you get out in 3 years, 100% of the money you put in is yours. The 1% auto match starts after you've been in for 60 days. So you don't get it immediately, but after 60 days you get it. And after you've been in service for 2 years, you get all that money. So if you wash out after 6 months, you're not getting any of that money. But if you make it 2 years, you get that 1% that they were putting in for the entire 2 years minus the first 60 days when they weren't putting it in. Once you get to the match, which is after 2 years of service, you're vested. So after 2 years, everything is vested. Any money you put in is yours to start with, and then after 2 years, you're vested. It's confusing, but these graphs are pretty helpful to help you see. Take home point is put in 5% if you're under the blended retirement system and you're good. So just some final points about the TSP that I see a lot of questions about is if you worked as a civilian prior to joining the military and you had a 401k and you can roll that money into the TSP. Now, if your retirement money is at someplace with low fees for management, similar to the 0.04%, so if it's at Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab, any place like that, and you're in index funds, you may not have a benefit into rolling your money over into the TSP. I have not rolled my civilian money into the TSP because I have very similar investment options with similar fees, and I have some more investment options if I choose to invest outside of index funds. The next point is after you separate or retire, you can take your vested TSP funds and roll it over into a new employer's 401k in many instances. You can roll it over into a rollover IRA that you set up with Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, any other investment account. Or you can leave it at the TSP and it'll continue to grow. So you won't be able to add any additional money to it, but it will continue to grow at whatever the stock market is doing. Your Roth contributions that you put in can be withdrawn at any time. So what that means is if you put $2,000 into your Roth TSP and next week your car breaks down and you have no other money, you can pull out the $2,000 that you put in and there are no fees. If you put into the traditional TSP, you cannot pull that money out without a withdrawal penalty. There are a couple exceptions, but typically you're not pulling any money out without a penalty. Now, if you put in $2,000 and it's grown and you've made $200 on that for your earnings, the $2,000 can be withdrawn with no fees. But if you want to take out that $200, you're going to pay an early withdrawal fee. But your contributions that you put in have already been taxed, and those are your dollars. You can withdraw those at any time. These are kind of some of just the basics about the TSP. TSP.gov has some more information. There's a lot of stuff out there on the internet that will tell you this is what you should invest in, this is what fund you should invest in. If you're watching this video, then you're probably starting out early in your financial journey. And I recommend putting in the 5% if you're in the blended retirement system. And to make life easy, put it in an L fund, in a lifestyle fund. Even the G fund is better than nothing. It has a lower return rate, but if you're getting that match, you're doing great. But if you move it outside the G fund to an L fund or the C fund, you have a much higher potential of having good earnings. So that's some of the basics about the thrift savings plan. Hopefully this was helpful. Go to tsp.gov to learn more about individual funds, their past performance, and just remember that any money that you save is better than not saving any at all.